Alright, you can do it. This one. Daddy gets it.
In this video, I try to solve the age-old dilemma of getting your kids to enjoy doing chores. My wife and I wanted to come up with a system that would be enjoyable to everybody involved. Nobody likes to do chores, and so we wanted to come up with a system that could be fun and exciting, especially for the kids. One of the problems that we face as a family is knowing what chores each person should be doing, and then following through with those chores to see if they have been completed. Instead of dictating what each person would be doing, my wife and I decided to come up with a fun way to assign chores. We came to the agreement that we don't care who does what, just as long as it gets done. So we decided something random would be fun, and if we could turn it into a game, that would be even funner. We thought about multiple ideas, like a spinning wheel or a card game. Ultimately, we came up with a Plinko board that we could drop something down, and whatever person it lands on would be required to do that chore. I had a frame from an old project, and I found some scrap pegboard. This pegboard was warped, but I thought that I could force it into place or possibly fix the warp. First, I cut the existing frame to size and glued it back together. And then I measured how much was left that the pegboard did not cover. I cut a 1/4-inch piece of plywood to cover this area. This became the bottom of the Plinko board. To flatten out the pegboard, my wife had a brilliant idea of spraying water on it and then putting something heavy on top of it to see if it would flatten out. As this pegboard already had water stains on it, I was not confident that this was going to work. I should never question my wife because this worked perfectly. Once it was flattened out, I simply glued and stapled the pegboard onto the frame, as well as the 1/4-inch piece of plywood for the bottom. Next, I needed to make the cubbies for each person's name. I took leftover pieces of the 1/4-inch plywood and cut it into strips the height of the bottom of the Plinko board and the width of the frame. I then took these and sanded the edges of them to get rid of all the rough edges. I also sanded a chamfer on the top of them so that the ball from the Plinko board would go into one or the other and it wouldn't get stuck on the top of the dividers. I used CA glue and activator to glue these in place. Then I took another scrap of the 1/4-inch piece of plywood and I glued it on the top, crossing the dividers. This made the dividers stay in place a lot better. it also provided a natural breaking point between the bottom of the Plinko board and the top. I glued sections on the back of the board, one for popsicle sticks that held the consequences, and another to hold the list of chores that were needed to be done. Once everything was dry, I took it outside and I sprayed it with some white spray paint just to give a uniform look. Once that was done, I cut a 1/4-inch dowel to size so that it would friction fit into the pegboard. I sanded a chamfer on the ends of the pegs to help get them into the holes of the pegboard. It took a little bit of trial and error to figure out the best locations to put the pegs. I ended up putting a peg in every other hole and then skipping one row and doing the other set of holes for the next row. This was just enough space to let a poker chip fit in between each one of the pegs. Once all the pegs were pushed in place, I flipped it over and added some CA glue to each peg to make sure that it was secured and that it wouldn't fall out. After practicing using the board, it became apparent that I needed a cover over the top of the pegs so that the poker chip would not go flying out of the Plinko board instead of going down and into one of the cubbies. So I went and got a piece of plexiglass, mixed up some epoxy, and then glued the plexiglass to the frame of the Plinko board. After a couple hours, the epoxy was cured, and I was able to flip the Plinko board over and put a stand so that it could stand up by itself. I then found some pictures of different chores and found the ones that were relevant to us. I printed them, and then I got business card magnets. I cut those up, I stuck the pictures to them. That way each chore could be magnetized to the refrigerator. And then we got some popsicle sticks and wrote consequences on them. We also put magnets on the back of these. Some of the chores that we picked were easy, others were hard. The idea that some weeks you would have a light week, other weeks you would have a heavy week. It also adds some competition to see if you could give a heavy chore to a specific person. The way that we've been using this has been each person grabs a chore and then puts the poker chip in the Plinko board. Wherever that chip lands, that chore goes to that person. This continues until all of the chores are taken. We put a limit on 3 chores per person so that one person doesn't get all of the chores and another person gets no chores. Let me know what you think. Is there something I did that you don't like? Is there something that I could do better? Maybe an addition? If you're not subscribed, make sure and do that. Also, hit the notification bell so that you know next time I upload a video. Thank you for watching, and make sure to check out some of my other videos.